Hey, great to have you here. So it's been a while since I've done a standard video, but today I'll be reviewing the recently released movie Iron Lung. If you're unfamiliar with this movie, it's an independent film written, directed, and starring popular YouTuber Markiplier. I have been a fan of his channel for some time, so keep that in mind as I'm discussing this movie. The film is based on the video game of the same title made by David Szymanski, I think I'm pronouncing that right, that Mark did a previous Let's Play of on his channel, and having watched him previously play the game, this film was an extremely faithful adaptation, and I think some of the gameplay mechanics like the map traversal and the camera outside of the ship were true to the game and translated well to the big screen. The general premise here is an eldritch horror or Lovecraftian story where after an event called the Quiet Rapture, most of humanity has been wiped out due to the vanishing of all planets and stars, leaving those on board space stations pretty much there just to roam and search for resources, like here in this instance, in the blood ocean of a moon. Our protagonist Simon is a convict who previously seemingly got involved with this violent cult at a young age and was solely held responsible for the explosion of Filament Station. So from there, the entire movie is filmed inside this submersible called the Iron Lung, where Simon is being forced to follow orders to amend for his crimes. I'm sure there's a lot more lore around the setting and other areas, but that's pretty much the gist of things. If I'm making a movie comparison, Iron Lung is kind of a combination between Event Horizon and Buried. Simon's journey into this blood ocean is intended to fill the viewer with both the dread of being in this unknown environment, surrounded by who knows what outside the ship's steel walls, but it also leaves an imprint of isolation. A lot of creepy things happen throughout the movie that leave you questioning what's real and what isn't. And external variables even add to this uncertainty further with things like extremely low levels of oxygen. Those in charge play with Simon's hope by convincing him to continue following orders despite continually not being granted his own freedom. When looking at the cast here, it's obviously a very small roster. I think Mark's performance was outstanding, and I think this will both serve as a stepping stone for his film career, but also a wake-up call to Hollywood. Carolyn Kaplan I'm not too familiar with, but her role as Ava was great. On top of that, you had some other known names from the gaming space with Troy Baker and Jacksepticeye. This movie's budget was only $3 million and has already made over $20 million in returns, which continues to prove how you can provide incredible results with less money, similar to something like Godzilla Minus One did. Sure, this isn't a blockbuster Marvel film, but the special effects actually looked really well done, and I was glad to see that this movie did get visual payoffs instead of just teasing the audience. I will state, I do think you're more likely to have a good time with this movie if you're a fan of Markiplier. But looking at potential criticisms, you may be turned away by long stretches of tension buildup without much action. We have these moments of time passing that strictly utilize creative camera angles of condensation or blood dripping within the vessel's walls. And I guess that makes Iron Lung a blood vessel? In addition, at times it can be challenging to hear dialogue coming from the vessel's speaker system due to a realistic attempt at losing signal the deeper that Simon travels. And my final knock would be that if you're coming into the story fresh, some of the backstory and world may leave you a bit confused. But I guess you could argue that all three of these issues are intentionally done and by design. Before jumping to a final score, let's look at some subscores. For the plot, I'll say this one's a 4 out of 5. When Mark originally played the game, it wasn't necessarily my favorite video of his, but I did like the mysterious world and simplicity of this story's direction. For an entertainment score, I'll go with 3 out of 5. I already talked about some of the downtime in this ship, but that didn't excessively take away from my enjoyment. For a gore score, this is a bit of a weird one. So apparently this movie set the record for most fake blood used with over 80,000 gallons, beating out Evil Dead 2013 for that title. But it's mostly used with pools of blood, so not something overly grotesque that you need to turn away from. There is some body horror though, therefore I will say 4 out of 5 here. For a scare score, I'll say 2 out of 5. It's more of a slow burn and not jump scare reliant. Most of the scare factor comes from the unknown of outside of the ship, so that's somewhat left up to one's own imagination. For rewatchability, I'll go with 2 out of 5. I'll likely watch it again at some point since I do enjoy Mark's content, but it may not be a repeat for some fans. However, I do think repeated viewings would lead to you picking up some of the smaller details on the plot points. Now for a final score, I'm giving Iron Lung an 8 out of 10. It's a movie that I'm glad I went to go see and could support, and in my opinion, horror needs more movies like Iron Lung and less mainstream flops. Even with lower budgets, I'm all for new and creative ideas that deliver via solid execution. You can truly see the passion for Markiplier in this one, and I recommend you check it out if you haven't already. But those are just my thoughts. If you've seen it, share yours in the comments below, and make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.